version of soil and water conservation. Where would we be without pollinators? Greetings. I may look like your typical 21st century girl, but appearances can be deceiving. I've actually traveled here from the future, where the situation is precarious. Now, before you think I'm being overly dramatic by making this sound like the latest sci-fi flick, let me ask you, what isn't overly dramatic about having the entire fate of civilization in your hands? Some may not understand how the small actions by many can impact the future. But by recognizing the diminishing number of pollinators and taking the steps to correct the dire possibilities, you have the power to decide what your future will be. There's no doubt that days If you think 2020 has been bad, let me give you a taste of things to come. A reduction in pollinators could mean a whole lot more than no honey on your biscuit. You wouldn't even have the biscuit. And forget about that nice, warm, steamy cup of coffee to start your morning. From fruits and vegetables, which support healthy diets, to sugarcane and chocolate, which are also pretty nice to have tucked away in the pantry. Approximately 1,000 plants need to be pollinated by animals in order to produce the goods on which we depend. Yes, that's right. Good luck with that evening headache without common over-the-counter drugs like aspirin. And even more importantly, imagine being sick or having surgery and not having access to pain medication like morphine and cancer treatment drugs. Clearly, a future with no pollinators means you'll be running on borrowed time. Losing some of our favorite foods, household products, and medicines may seem terrible, but it gets worse. Imagine a world with a failing agricultural economy because pollinator crops, which bring over $200 billion a year worldwide, are non-existent. Additionally, without the biodiversity that pollinators add to the agricultural landscape, crop yield and quality would ultimately be diminished. Even dairy, meat, and egg products would become more difficult to produce, and in turn would become more expensive. With a world population that is expected to grow by 2.3 million people by 2050, that's a lot of extra mouths to feed, when 35% of worldwide crop production is lost because it is pollinator dependent. There's no doubt that days are numbered for a society with a crumbling agricultural system and lots of hungry bellies. But you don't get to call a timeout yet. Did you know the very air we breathe depends on pollinators? With increased use of fossil fuels, the levels of carbon dioxide are increasing. Pollinators are important for the reproduction of wild plants, which produce oxygen by utilizing the carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. Pollinators even play a role in providing clean water and preventing soil erosion. Plants, which must be pollinated, provide roots that hold soil, preventing erosion and runoff into our water system. Without enough healthy food, clean air and water, and a thriving agricultural landscape, our lives as we know it would simply fail to exist. It's a race against time to protect the pollination process. Habitat loss is one of the main problems facing pollinators. While farmers are making great strides in sustainable agriculture, feeding a booming population means agriculturists will continue to farm more acreage and strive for maximum yield. Additionally, more people will need more space, which means the population will continue to disperse into rural areas, bringing more manicured lawns and concrete and less wildflowers and native grasses. Field edges, hedgerows, and woodlots are already disappearing, leaving pollinators like bees, butterflies, and moths without an appropriate place to thrive. The sands of time are sinking for pollinators, and another problem is pollution. While most farmers take care to only target specific species and try to use the least harmful formulations, pesticide drift and misuse are a threat. Some chemicals linger in the environment for a long time before breaking down. Others can contaminate pollen grains, which are an essential source of nourishment for bees. Even air and light pollution can be factors. Air pollution can cover scents leading to flowers, and light pollution can make moth pollinators susceptible to predators like birds and bats when they are attracted to artificial lights at night. I've come here to tell you that it's crunch time, but all is not lost. You can beat the clock by taking counteractive measures to minimize the damage to pollinator habitats and protect the pollinator population. Agriculturalists can help pollinators by recognizing and enhancing diverse habitats. The USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service offers more than 3 dozen conservation practices. Opportunities like the Conservation Stewardship Program and the Conservation Reserve Program can offer financial assistance for implementing modifications. A few simple changes like hedgerows, field borders, and more diverse grazing can make huge impacts in creating a more biologically diverse ecosystem. This not only promotes healthy pollination, but also benefits farmers by encouraging a strong agricultural landscape, which leads to the better crop quality and leads to higher profits. Just in the nick of time, another strategy you can practice to slow the destruction of pollinators and their habitat is the correct use of and limiting exposure of pesticides. Pesticides have an important job to do and can be necessary for farmers. However, by using minimal amounts only when necessary and targeting only the intended pest, they can be used effectively with little damage. Now that you've peered through the looking glass of time to see where you would be without pollinators, the future is basically up to you. Will your society embark on a path that will lead to agrarian failure? Or step into the future of ecological harmony? It's high time to cooperate and educate others on the importance of pollinators in our world. Each one of you can make small changes that will have a huge impact. Humans of 2020, you've heard my message, and I know you'll do the right thing. Ultimately, only time will tell, but only you can join together to make our future be beautiful. Thank you.
Good job, Ava. I have
Thank
3
you.
questions for you really quickly. All right. The very first question is, which agricultural products are influenced by pollination? Which
Some
agri Go ahead.
sorry. Some agricultural products that are influenced by pollination. There are many actually. Some of my favorites are honey, which I eat every morning for breakfast, and other foods as well, like fruits and veggies. And then you have on a different side, you have cotton, which cotton makes up our clothes that we need to wear every day, and it needs to be pollinated. So
Great. What do you think are the greatest threats to pollinators?
some of the greatest threats to pollinators are habitat loss and pesticides. Pollinators are losing the places that they need to live and thrive, and pesticides and other pollution factors are killing them off.
Great. And what are some examples of practices farmers could use to increase pollinator numbers?
Some practices that farmers can use are CP42, which is a program under CPR, and farmers can take retired cropland and um, turn it into a habitat for bees and pollinators just by planting native grasses and wildflowers. They can do this by contacting their local FSA office, and they can receive financial compensation for doing it as well. So they can make money, but use to retired land and help pollinators.